Hello everybody, this is Think Differently Thursday. My name's Helen, and something certainly a bit different this week. First of all, we can't even convince you that we are live because look at us with our curtains closed. So we've recorded this earlier in the week, but it's coming out to you on Thursday, and it is a bit different because for the first time ever, I have multiple guests. Here are all of my guests, and I'll tell you what we're going to talk about in a little while. But why don't I just get them to introduce themselves? And yeah, just introduce yourselves to start with.
Okay, so I'm Emily Hannah, and I work for the Forge Church looking after groups and courses.
Hello, I'm Sarah and I attend Forge.
And I'm Sarah and I attend the Forge as well.
And I'm Sue, and yeah, we're all part of the same fellowship, I guess.
And Sue, first person to come on twice, because we've chatted on Think Differently before, haven't we?
We have.
You're my first ever return guest. Welcome.
Oh, excellent.
And so let me explain for people that are listening today. So we're in the middle of a series called Taskmaster at Church, and we're looking at particular challenges in life and how our faith plays out in them, really. And this last Sunday, Steve spoke to us about the challenge of parenting. And so lots of things this week have been really focused on parenting. And so today I wanted to talk to some parents, and I do realise I haven't kind of done much diversity here because we're all mums. I didn't get any dads here, so if that offends the dads, well, just contact me and we can obviously have a chat. We can do that, no problem. But yeah, so we're all parents, and I think parenting is one of those roller coaster journeys that we've experienced. But just tell me, you guys, you've introduced yourselves, but just tell me who it is you parent.
So I parent two little boys, Finn, who is 6, and Riley, who's literally just turned 4. So 6 and a 4-year-old, and both boys.
So I'm married to Martin and we have got one daughter, Amelie, who is 2 years old.
And I've got Hannah, who's 10, and I've got Oliver, who's 13.
And I'm not sure I qualify here, except that I do, because I have 3 children. But my youngest is 27 and my oldest is 36, and I have 2 grandchildren. So I'm kind of a little bit further down the road, I think you could say, and probably just round the corner.
It means you've got all the experience, Sue. You know it all. And I'm similar to Sue. I've got babies that are grown up, 23 and somewhere around 26, I'm guessing. I'm sure Jack's 26. Yeah. So yeah, grown up children. If your children, maybe they do know, if your children knew that we were going to talk about parenting today, what do you think they would say that you do really well, or what might they say you could improve on, do you think?
I spoke to my kids about this earlier,
right.
And I was surprised that Hannah actually said I give good hugs. So I thought that's a good one. That's a
nice.
win.
Yeah.
But both of them said they'd like more screen time. That was the
right.
Yeah.
What is the rule in your house then with screens?
They have to get off at 6, and then they can go on maybe after dinner. But otherwise, yeah, it's a bit of a battle. Yeah.
I think mine would probably say something similar, like they would say that I give good hugs or that I play lots with them. But the thing that they'd want me to stop doing or improve on would be to stop shouting so much, which isn't a great one. But definitely there is a thing in our house where daddy gives more TV than mummy. So I think increasing screen time would definitely be something that they would probably say as well.
Right. I guess Amelie's a bit young for that question, isn't she?
I did try and ask her, but yeah, I didn't get very far with an answer. I think at the minute she's in a bit of a Thomas the Tank Engine love. So at the moment I'm not very good at remembering their names. So she'll ask me what they're called, and then she goes, "We'll ask Daddy instead."
Knowing the names of James. What about you, Sue? There's a whole wealth of parenting been done there.
Well, yeah, it's very different parenting people who are parents themselves as now for my middle daughter. So I guess my parenting strength in that particular department is that I'm a great babysitter. So we've kind of moved on a little bit from that point of view. I'm very proud of all of them. They're very different, but I'm very proud of them, and I hope they know that. I hope that that's something that they've picked up from the way that we communicate with each other. That would be good.
Fab. I think parenting is one of those things. It's a bit like hairdressing. I think I was with a friend during the week, and her son has recently got married, and she did everybody's hair. She because people hadn't been able to get to hairdressers, so she'd cut her mum's hair and her dad's hair, and she'd cut her son's hair. And we did laugh at how hairdressing looks so easy, doesn't it? If you're at the hairdresser's, snip, 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 but it just looks easy. And I think sometimes parenting's like that, because I was quite an expert until I had children. I just I mean, how hard could it be? Looking in from the outside, I just thought, so easy, but actually, yeah, not easy really, is it? We've my daughter's recently been converting old VHS tapes to put them on memory sticks, and I just keep looking back at like stages of parenting from when they were babies and when they were toddlers, and almost thinking with like quarter of a century of experience of it, oh, if I could do it again, if I could bring all of this experience to it and do it again, oh, there's so many things I think perhaps I would do differently and perhaps do better. I don't know. Are there things, and I know you're at different stages with your parenting, but are there things that already you kind of think, oh, if I was doing it again, I would do it differently? I'd make my children be tidier. I definitely would make them be tidier. I never was really big on the whole, come on, like we've finished playing with that, so let's put that away before we get something else out. And at the end of the day, I just had to put everything away. So I'd definitely make them be tidier. I'd have rules about tidiness. What about you guys? Anything you'd do differently?
I think for me, one of the things that lots of people said to me when, like, so mine are 6 and 4, so I'm still very early days, I recognize that. But thinking about having a baby, I remember thinking that everyone would say, oh, you've got to get it into a routine. You've got to get it like sorted so there's eating and sleeping at the right times and things like that. And I just wish I'd cuddled them more. So I think I was so paranoid about like not letting them sleep on me, because then they'd attach to me too much and they'd only sleep on me and all those things. And I wish, particularly with my eldest, I did it more with my second, I wish I'd cuddled them more. But then on the flip side of that, I also, looking back from the last 4 years with Riley, be kind to yourself as a mum, where especially when you've got very little ones, that it's okay to have your time, that it's okay to try to find your time in the day. Those would be my 2 pieces of advice. Cuddle them as much as you possibly can do, from baby right the way, probably through till mine are 40, I'll still be doing it. But also just, make sure that I should have been more intentional about looking after me, so that I could also look after them better. Their needs don't trump my needs.
Yeah. Do you mean like with really practical stuff, like getting enough sleep yourself? Or do you mean like giving yourself some time out and allowing yourself to go off and do your own thing?
A bit of both, really, because, you know, when you're sleep deprived, I think having sleep is probably your biggest need. Yeah. But yeah, that whole thing of being, it's okay to say, I can leave you with somebody else for a bit and I can go off and do something else. I can go and see my friends for a bit. Yeah. Or it's okay to drop you for just an hour with somebody, for me to go for a walk and do something different. And that I'm a better mum for coming back after that time.
I think I've always had weekends away ever since, well, before the kids were born. So it was something that I kind of carried on doing even when they came along. And I think it's really good for them to see you doing your thing, and because I would encourage them to do their thing. So I think it's good modelling. I really do. I've even forgotten what the question was. What were we answering? Oh yeah, what we'd do differently.
I think
Sarah, what about you?
So Andy's still young, so I'm sure there's still lots of time for us to have regrets and change our mind and think we'll do things differently. But I think I certainly am really conscious to try and to not have any regrets across all aspects of life. So really trying to embrace what we do and understand, even if we later would have done something different, to have not regretted why we did it like that then. So try not to regret, but I find it hard and have found it hard to try to not compare myself with others in terms of parenting. So other parents, but also particularly thinking how I was parented, and was really I don't even know all of how I was parented, but how I think I was parented, or how other people were, and to try and I know that they don't make sense, lots of those comparisons, and aren't based on true fact, which I know. So to try and forget about that and think of what's best for us to do rather than what I think someone else would want me to be doing.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, it's really hard. Parenting's
is
all like this comparison game, and you just see it gets worse when you get them to school as well then, because there's all the ways that parents do schooling with them, and you're like, oh, am I doing that right, as long with everything else that I've got to juggle. But and
I think there's such truth in that I think we are doing the best that we can do. I think we bring our best to it, and I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I think mostly and same for our parents too. I think some of their decisions and choices might not sit right with how we do things now, but I'm sure that will be the same when my children have children. Are you finding that, Sue, that it's all different? Are you seeing a difference with how Katie is doing it?
I think generations move on, and we see that in lots of different walks of life, don't we? And so what my parents, what my mum would have thought of as normal, I would probably have changed for my children, and now I see Katie changing that again for hers. And it doesn't mean that one was right and one was wrong. They're just different, and they reflect age, really. I remember deciding very, very early on, before I had children, that one thing I was never going to do, because I often heard this at home, I was never ever going to say, because I said so. I was never going to give that as a reason. I definitely wasn't. And I remember when Sarah was quite small and she'd been doing the why? And eventually I turned to her in exasperation and said, because I... And as I started it, I thought, oh no, I have become it was not going to be. And things just, they go on through the generations. But screen time, that was never a problem for my parents, for us to have screen time. We didn't even have a telly.
Absolutely.
But it's a modern issue, so the issues change, I think, as we go through the generations.
Yeah, definitely. Have you found yourselves, I think it's quite hard to know, and Sarah, you were referring to like how you were parented, and I don't know that we always know what that was really, but do you find yourself, like Sue saying, do you hear yourself saying things that you heard your parents say, or even just way of doing it? Are there things that you've kind of adopted because you thought it was a good way of being parented?
So not necessarily that I've had myself saying the same things, but more it just makes me very aware and very conscious of it. And so especially realizing, so Martin and I, in lots of ways, I don't think we had very different upbringings. Like from the outside, it should be quite similar upbringings, but we can really notice when we got married, and then notice even more again when we have children, of differences of how our families did things, and noticing then that effect that again, neither are better or worse than the other, but how grandparents are with family. We're noticing the differences between, and we're just quite aware of it, and I think acknowledging that can then stop any conflict from potentially appearing.
Sure.
I just read a book that's quite good about this kind of thing. So the book You Wish Your Parents Read and Your Children Will Be Glad That You Did. I think it's called. Have you read that?
Anybody? I haven't read it.
No, but I've heard of it.
Philippa Perry. I think it's fairly recent, but it was interesting. It covers lots of different things. It's not a Christian book, but it talks about how to have good kind of marriage relationships. It talks about before children are born, but also right through to adulthood. But it's that lots of things in it, but it's that kind of question of how can you avoid the mistakes your parents did, or how can you, the relationship between your parents and you. It's quite an interesting book. I'd recommend it.
It does sound good. I guess, in a sense, if we almost go into parenting as well and thinking about our children, we want our children to do it even better than us, don't we? We really want to convey some of that to our children.
I think one of the things that I'm really conscious of is, and it sort of stems from what Sarah said about that comparison thing and trying to get it right in our minds, is what do we really want our children to learn? Are we trying to teach them to be perfect people, or are we actually trying to teach them that it's okay to make mistakes? And actually, as a parent, I know I make a myriad of mistakes in so many different ways that people probably can't even believe that I make, but that I do. And my children could tell horror stories of me as a parent, as well as lovely stories of me as a parent. But the thing that I always take home at the end of the day is am I modeling to them what it looks like that when I make a mistake, do I know how to say sorry for that and move on from that? And actually, if my kids can grow up knowing that, that's way more powerful than knowing that I got it right or that they need to get it right when they do parenting. Do they know how it is to recover from mistakes that they might make? And like, if I can model that to them, which I probably do more than I probably want to, like that's the biggest take home, I think, for me as a parent. And kind of, and I think talking about what our parents have modeled, my parents didn't always model that well to me, but I think I've been really challenged about how I now model that to my kids.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess my other hat that I wear at times is being a teacher and working in primary school. Same with you, Sarah. You're not primary though, are you? Are you older children?
Okay.
Yeah, but I think it's often a case that you can look at children and just realise what sort of input they've had around things like when things don't go their way, or when they fail at something, or when there's been dispute. And I think often it's quite telling how they manage to navigate those things. And I think a lot of that, I don't think school is the biggest influence. That I think what they are taught at home about how to deal with conflict and rejection and loss and just stuff not going their way is hugely important. Probably.
And also, and also relationships that you have with your friends as well, that also is a really good model for them to as they're moving up, with especially like Emily, you said about when they hit school, it is completely different. They're out of you can't choose their friends for them, but if they can see you modeling with your friendships, then that's really positive as well. That has the same effect.
I agree. I was going to pick up on some of the stuff that Steve talked about in church on Sunday. I think there was lots of things I wanted to pick out, but one of the things he said was, what we think of as important is often perceived differently by our children. And I don't know if you remember that he and Sarah had asked the kids, what's important to us, and expecting things like compassion and faith, and they said, I think, to be sensible and polite was what they said. And I thought that's really interesting, isn't it? And it just really made me think about, and he brought it out so much, about being explicit about what we want our children to know is important. And faith is a big thing, obviously, that Steve was talking about on Sunday. And it made me, I was watching it with somebody else, and it just made us really reflect on our own parenting. And I think for me, I've been someone when they were little that kind of fell into that category of not being really, really intentional about conversation around belief. And so I think for my children, unfortunately, I think it looked more about what we did, about the busyness of church, as opposed to, I'm almost, my mind was thinking, was it more like church than Jesus? I don't think we had really intentional conversation about what I believed and why I did, and what the actual impact of that was. I do wonder if I'm kind of the more I talked about it yesterday, the more I thought, actually, I think I might be being a bit tough on myself. I don't think it was quite that, but I don't know, what are you guys the kind of thinking and feeling is your experience? I know, Sarah, actually, you did Doorstep Challenge for us, didn't you, recently? Was it called Doorstep Challenge, Doorstep Story?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember then thinking, wow, you're being really intentional with your little 2-year-old about faith and sharing what's important to you, and you've got routine and disciplines in place already, haven't you?
So I think that fits with our personalities and our nature. We like that kind of discipline and routine. But also we wanted to do things or start stuff as early as we could, so it didn't then seem weird or hard to suddenly start implementing it when she got to a certain age, but just for it to be natural and normal right from as long as she could remember. So there's always more that I'd like to be doing, but trying to just make it just faith part of normal life. And I think actually, in a way in which we hadn't expected or planned, lockdown has been amazing at making that happen more. So because whereas before it might have been quite easy that Sunday was church day, or there was that place where you go to learn about church, it's made us even more think it's more responsibility on us, and we've got to make sure she's getting it because from where she wasn't getting it before in the same way. So whilst she now knows that Sundays is new church day, and she watches our adult service or mummy and daddy's church, and she watches her church and joins in with those and absolutely loves it, we feel more engaged with what she's learning and knowing what's going on, and then we can talk about that with her throughout the week. So now the songs, we know the songs that she was listening to in it and play them now pretty much before every meal time. We'll be playing those, and her favourite songs now are church songs, and trying to then filter it throughout the week into other things as well. So trying to remind her about things that we heard on Sunday, or like when praying, trying to bring in other stuff. So I think like it's easy enough maybe to pray before meals, but to try and go a little bit further. So we've been doing stuff like at the moment when we've gone back to work and taking her to grandparents, on the way we'll pray for her day and my day and suggest things, but then trying to remember on the way home as well to then say, well, did those things happen, or remember that bit, which I think is so easy to forget. And stuff like before praying before she goes to bed, we try and at the end, after asking for things, or there's now certain people which she prays that they'll become Christians, and I'm kind of want her to, but also kind of terrified she's going to tell them to their face now that this is what we're praying for them. At the end of that, we'll then say, so now it's going to be quiet for a moment, listen to see if Jesus has got anything to say to us. So kind of trying to build in, it's not just about asking for things, trying to do, so when Mark has gone to work, we'll then send him a prayer in the morning. So I'll say to her, what do you want to pray for Daddy for today? And he gets some wonderful texts of all sorts of things of what we're thinking of that day. So trying to just it not just be the same words which we just say before we eat, but trying to just involve it throughout the week in other times. And I think I'm so grateful, and thinking about it recently, is actually we have both got families who both from both sides go to church, and wider family. I'm really grateful that it's not just us two that are telling this to her, but through friends and through family, she is hearing this from lots of different places, and really want to encourage them to feel like they can talk to her about faith, and want her to hear it from as many different places as she can. So it's not just us.
That sounds so great, Sarah, because that just sounds like Jesus is part of everyday conversation and experience, and hasn't in any way been put in any kind of compartment, whether that be church and Sunday or other compartments we might put him in. But that sounds brilliant. You should write the book, Sarah.
It's definitely not perfect, but we're trying, and always after just more tips and more ideas of things we can do, and especially as she gets older. So I'm after any more ideas. Sounds
lovely. What's your experience been, Sue? I was when I was thinking about this, I was remembering, and this is way back 25 years, no, not that much, but I remember when your James, who is now
27,
your James and Sam started school, I think that's what it was, or it might have been changing class, and they'd had to say who their best friend was. I think I might be remembering this story wrong, you'll have to tell me. they'd had to say who their best friend was, I guess, for being paired up in school. And didn't both of them say, I think they might have said the other, Sam said James and James said Sam, and Jesus.
You see, now I feel awful because I've completely forgotten that story. Did they really? That is awesome.
I'm sure I can remember Sarah saying it. Yeah. And I thought, then isn't that just so great that that's their common language? That's easy. That's Jesus is my best friend, and so
everyday speak.
Yeah.
I think I'm probably more intentional about that now with my granddaughters.
Okay.
Part of that, the age-old excuse that we can make. Robin was away a lot when the children were small, and so with 3 small children, it was like the time when you're on your own to do all these things is, if you managed to do a prayer at bedtime, then you felt that you'd done your job, and it was then it was okay. I think they saw within my friendships that Jesus was very real, and so on. But I think with my 8-year-old granddaughter, we now pray together, and we do what we call tandem prayers. So we do a sentence each, and sometimes they're really quite deep prayers with big meaty issues, and sometimes they're extraordinarily frivolous, which is great. And I don't think I was probably frivolous with mine. I think probably it was a bit more serious at that point. But now this time around, we'll do things like, thank you for the crazy colours on a parrot, or whatever, and it leads us places as we pray together like that. And and then she'll drop in something which has much more gravity than that, and it's like, whoa, okay. But
it makes,
go on.
I was just going to say, it makes us remember that Jesus is interested in all parts of their lives and our lives, and that he's there when you want to say, wow, isn't that amazing, and he's there when it's really deep. And I think that's really important that they learn that like Sarah says, it's not rote words that you say the same, but it's from the ridiculous to the really serious, and for them to, like, I think, never underestimate what's actually going on for them. So as ridiculous as it might sound to me, actually it might be really important to them, as like, and so if they come and say, oh, God, I thank you for this, like, whatever toy or whatever, that might be a really huge thing for them. So for me, never to like make that small, but to really celebrate the fact that they're just feeling free to talk to God about that. I just think it's incredible.
I loved it that I don't know if he was quoting from a book or whether it was just Steve saying it, but in his talk he was saying just encourage them to tell God their favourite joke and to tell them their favourite film. And I thought that was really great, because I think that decreases any kind of distance between a child and God. It's like you'd say, say that to your mum, say that to your granddad. And if we're saying this is a close relationship, this is a friendship, then God wants to know that stuff too, doesn't he?
I don't want to break Steve's aura of knowledge. He stole that from Rachel Turner. That's from the book. So the lady who wrote the book Parenting Children for a Life of Faith, she also does the Parenting for Faith course, and in it she talks around that and about the idea of talking about the ordinary and the everyday. She even, which we thought was a little bit strange in the group that I watched it in, she goes for dates with God, and she talks to her children about the date that she has with God. She goes and sits and sort of just has some time with him, and she talks about it as well. But it's that normalizing, we go to the cinema or something, and
and we're running that course, aren't we, Em? The Parenting Children, what's it called, that one?
It's called Parenting for Faith. I think it's being run on a Wednesday evening, and genuinely it completely changed how I viewed talking about faith with my children. So people can think, oh, church leaders, she'll know how to do that, and actually there was so many things that I just learned, some really great things. Like, I get my kids now to whisper into their hands their prayers, because I want them to know that it's not about talking to me, it's about talking to God. So they do their secret prayers to Jesus by whispering into their hands. and then it's about them and him, not me and him and them. But there are so many different really amazing helpful things in that course, whether you're parenting youngsters or whether or not actually you've never thought about this and you've got teenage kids. Again, really great material for you to have a look at and think through.
Isn't it? So wouldn't it be really great, like if kids are having that experience, what you're talking about with your kids, and that really familiarity with God and that ease of conversation, they're not going to get to be adults and go, oh, I don't like to pray. Because I've had that experience so much that, you know, in small group setting perhaps, or other places, a lot of adults that want to be much freer in prayer. And I've heard it said a lot. I think we talked about it when we did a Think Differently, didn't we, Sue, about that idea of I want to pray better. And us like, but it's actually just a conversation now. If they've begun that conversation when they're as little as Amelie, they're going to be having a very rich, warm relationship with Jesus as adults, aren't they? They're not going to have that. I think there's a barrier for people sometimes about getting the words right. But if adults have understood like what you're saying with your kids, whisper it because it's for God, it's not for anybody else, then that would really destroy that kind of that worry of like, oh, it doesn't sound right, I'm not getting it right. Brilliant. What about you, Sarah, other Sarah?
So along that line, actually, Hannah got a notebook that she keeps by her bed, and I've just, because I write a prayer journal, not every day, just every so often really, and it's something that I've shared with the children. And before we got our dog, we knew we wanted a dog and we had in mind what we wanted, and so I was like, well, God is in the specifics. Like, he wants to know what we want, what's on our heart can be on his heart. So we wrote down a prayer together, and as a family, and we wrote down what we wanted, blah blah blah, and obviously we have the most amazing dog, which is great, but obviously it's reminding them that there are some aspects that we wrote down. We can go back to the prayers and we can see actually there are aspects that he answered and there are aspects that he didn't answer as well, and that then leads on to further discussion about, well, what happens if he doesn't answer our prayers. So I've just encouraged her to also keep a prayer journal so she can do that, and actually that's been a really lovely way of her being able to speak to God without, like what you were saying, Emily, without it being with me. It's actually something that she can then do on her own, and it's just lovely. It's a really lovely way of encouraging them to go on.
And that's so helpful, isn't it, to be able to, I think we all forget the things that we've talked to God about, and it's so helpful to be able to go back and reflect on them, often so encouraging. So I guess just like looking at us, and your children are much younger than mine and Sue's, and it was good for me to hear when Steve was talking about that actually our children will choose, and so whatever input they've had, there's still a point at which children will make their own choices. And I thought it was really important what Steve was saying about they choose their own way, and it's not necessarily a reflection on parenting, because that's not our responsibility, is not their choice. And not all Sue's children are Christians, not all, one of mine is and one of mine isn't. And so for me that was helpful really to hold on to that, and to know that I don't hold the responsibility for the choices that my kids make, but it is hard, I think, at times. And I think it's really good to be prepared for not that for your kids to tell you difficult stuff, or to make choices that perhaps aren't necessarily aligned with your own thinking, and I think it's good to be ready for that. I think one of my choices personally is that I decided a long time ago that whatever my children said to me, the first words out of my mouth would be, I love you. And it was just like a decision I made before I knew what I needed to react to. Do you know what I mean? And I just, I've held on to that, and it's something I've wanted my kids to know, that my love for them isn't conditional on the choices that they make. And particularly, I think it's a really hard one around faith, because faith is something that is absolute. It's not like a hobby, is it? It's not like, oh, but you don't like football and I do like football. It's something that's like at the core of our beings. It's fundamental to who we are. And so it's being respectful of choices that they make. Have you found similarly, Sue?
Yeah, I think I almost said this a few minutes ago when we were talking about what we might do differently, actually, because I don't think I quickly enough realised that although, we'll put it this way, when we have children, we write a story in our heads for them, don't we? We have our hopes and our dreams, you know, he's going to be a policeman, she's going to be a teacher, or whatever, you know, she'll marry somebody rich and famous and very handsome, and he'll, you know, all the things. So you write this story in your head about how it's going to turn out. She'll be a missionary. He'll lead the Evangelical Alliance. And then at some point you realise that it's not your story to write. It's their story to write. And so giving them the freedom to make those choices and to write their own story and to live their own life, whilst being assured that our love is in no way diminished because of the choices that they've made, which don't fit the story we wrote. I mean, we very carefully imagined this story whilst, you know, right from this size onwards. And I didn't do that quickly enough. I didn't cotton on to that quickly enough. And that's something that I've learned through my parenting and through the years, is that giving them the freedom to be themselves and to make those decisions is actually really important. Yeah.
That's really good for me to hear, because I think I'm at that stage, like, which sounds really ridiculous at 6 and 4, but I'm starting to see that in Finn, that he's so different to his brother Riley, and I'm such a control freak as a mother, and I want them to do it now, and as I want them to do it in the way that I want them to do it, even things like getting dressed and brushing their teeth. And it's realizing to give him space to do it in his own way, to learn in his own way, to learn it, that he needs to get it done in that particular time, but just to let him be who he needs to be. And I know I'm not at the stage where, you know, he's making big life choices, but thank you, Sue. I needed to hear that, because I think that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I agree. I also love being in control, and the thought of that letting go or letting them choose things that might not be what I would choose or want sounds terrifying. So I think actually, it's really good to hear that we need to. I still don't necessarily know how I can, but to know that I need to find a way to.
Yeah, but even to have that in mind, isn't it? So like, what is my strategy going to be? How am I going to deal with that as and when that comes? And that will come with little things, and that will come with big things. And I think, half of the battle is knowing how you're going to react, you know, choosing what you're going to say or do when that comes up, really.
I remember listening to talk done by two people, Andy Stanley and Sandra Stanley, and they talked about what's the win of parenting. And they said, we often think that the win of parenting is to parent children so that they become good, well-rounded, good people in society. And I said, we want that to be the case. But the real win of parenting is to parent children so that when they become adults, they still want to spend time with you as a family. And I just think I see that in your family, Sue, and in your family, Helen. And I remember having a conversation with you probably about 4 years ago, Helen, asking you, how did you do it? And you telling me about exactly what you just said here, about that need to, whatever came out of their mouth, whatever they told you, to be okay with it, to not react in that moment, and to just be there to listen, because that showed them that you still loved them and that you were there for them, and that they could always come to you with whatever was going on in life. And so, yeah, I just think I always remember that the win is that actually they still want to spend time with me as a parent, not that they always know how the best way to do it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think we've talked around a little bit about Steve's challenge. I think one of the things he said was, how can we help our children develop a healthy relationship with God? And I think, Sarah shared, and you've talked about different things. Are there other things that are on people's minds, either that they're hoping to do in the future, or when you reflect back that you did do? Are there things that, just thinking about people listening as much as anything, are there things that we can share that are good to develop a healthy relationship with God? I think what Steve was really bringing out, and it's what I probably didn't do, but was about being really intentional, and so being quite disciplined with it. Steve was saying about the things that we do make them do in other areas of life because they're good for them, and we stick with it. And I think, he was suggesting that that's really good to have those kind of spiritual disciplines with kids as well. Are there things that people are doing or hope to do or have done in the past that we haven't kind of touched on here?
So in the last 2 years of 10-month groups when they've been on, we have been part of ones where it was as mums, but also the children were there too. Oh. And it's obviously different depending on what age your children are and for it to be able to work. But actually for us, we all felt, even though conversation could be hard for us as mums, that we were all really grateful that whatever age they were and how much they were really taking in, they were there present with us while we were talking about God and faith and those questions. Yeah. So it wasn't that we were just doing it all while they're asleep or in bed, or even that they just know that we went to that thing. They were able to, on whatever level, experience some of that with us.
Yeah.
Although that hasn't been able to happen over the last little while, and in this next round of groups we haven't got ones quite like that at the minute. I think still sharing with them what we are doing, so they know. So knowing that on a Tuesday night we're part of this group that talks about this thing, and telling them about it beforehand, or the next day telling them that's what we talked about in it. So just sharing with them how we grow our faith and what we do about church, even when they're not there.
Steve was saying, wasn't he, about quite often we keep our faith quite private, and we even call some of our time quiet time, and you take yourself away perhaps. And so that's undoing some of that, isn't it? That's being really open about it. And I guess as well, there's such a place for every aspect of life, but just for communication with your kids, isn't it? Like you were saying, Sarah, about talking with them about the stuff that you've talked about and how it's impacted life, and keeping those channels of communication open. So important. Yeah. Sarah, you were doing stuff with Hannah because Steve spoke about it on Sunday.
He did.
So you must have been carving out some time that you were doing the kids stuff with
her. I think I was just using, so during the lockdown time, Sarah, you were saying about during lockdown you are able to be a bit more intentional, and I think I was very aware of the fact that without going on a Sunday, it was down to me to try and bring that back in and to try and do something. And so I think I just, during the day, I've made use of the Forge resources that were on there, and I said to her, would you like to watch it, or would you like to do, I think I said to her, would you like to do RE, or would you like to your RE work, or would you like to watch the Forge? And obviously she chose the Forge. And so I was just pottering about, and so she was watching that, and then obviously that then led to her giving her life to Jesus, which was just incredible and was completely unexpected on my part. And I think to be honest, it actually showed me again, it comes down to their choices, because actually I could have done so many different things, but actually it came down to her decision. It was her choice, and I was genuinely really surprised, but in a really good way, in a positive way, and it's just led on to further conversations. Yeah.
That's so great.
So I think no matter what you do, like however small, like you just never know the impact of that. I think that's the thing. It doesn't have to be all in, it doesn't have to be massive. It can be the really small things. It could be just a conversation in the car that, you know, I remember Rebecca Warnock saying that she that when an ambulance went by, they'd pray as a family for whoever was involved in whatever it was that the ambulance was going to. And it's just bringing that, you know, those little things in. So
yeah, I think that's a big thread of just like the stuff that we've chatted through for this last little while, just bringing Jesus and our personal faith into everything that's going on, not separating it out, not keeping it away from the kids, but just involving them in it and making it a very, very natural thing. Such wise insight, you guys. It's been really lovely. You did just say about one of the courses that is running come October that would be really good for parenting and faith, but there's other things as well, aren't there, that people could tap into? Do you want to just tell us about them?
Yeah, so I'm just really aware, like, parenting is hard, but parenting is something that you do sometimes on your best days and sometimes on your worst days, and sometimes just having a toolbox of things that can help you is so important. So we've got the Parenting Children for a Life of Faith course, which helps with all the stuff that we've just been talking about here, and that is a phenomenal course. I really couldn't recommend it highly enough. Really is brilliant. But we've also got parenting course happening by the lovely Oliver and Rachel Westmancott, who are parenting teens and younger ones, so they've been there, done that, and that's just an opportunity to talk and to share. So it's called Parent Talk. It's done by Care for the Family. That's a brilliant course. It's 6 weeks, so yeah, sign up for that one. But also, most of us, not all of us, but most of us do parenting in a team because we're married or perhaps in a partnership. And so Sarah, as in Amelie and Sarah, and Martin, Sarah and Martin will be running the 7-week marriage course. And it could be that actually nothing to do with parenting, but you know what? Parenting brings its own stresses and strains on a marriage. And you might just want to check in and just talk and have your own space as a couple about your marriage. So they're running that as well. So we'd highly recommend that alongside these whole conversations around parenting.
Yeah, that is so great. Thank you for putting them on as well, Em. I think they're so relevant and so many people could tap into those. It's been super lovely. I haven't done chatting with more than one person on Think Differently Thursdays, and it's been really, really nice to do it in a group and just to kind of bounce off each other and get different insights and to share into some of your great experiences of what you're doing as parents. I think you're all doing a very fab job. And I think, if stuff that people have heard as this goes out kind of resonates, then I'm sure any of you lovely ladies would be happy to chat to folk that are listening. As we've said many times as we've chatted, parenting isn't easy. I love it, absolutely love it. I love parenting my kids, but it's not always easy. So I'm sure if people would like to chat through parenting stuff, then you guys would be happy to do that with them. But thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for sharing some of your story with us. Hugely appreciated. I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your evenings. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
You don't really have to go. I haven't stopped recording. Hold on. Oh, still recording. I'm trying not to. I seem to only have now the option to end the meeting, which I didn't want to do because I wanted to talk to you, but I can't stop recording. Hang on, I might be able to do it up here.